Lodo said not the dancing Naruzogi, Naruzo, the title of the Yamnachi methodly. Chakdam Mosum Topaji Euro, the Solo dot to be out. Kurwa Lodo to be out, and I think Lodo shares what they do, what the Chiva Metat. One Chiva Metat is that I will talk about my is. On Seman Sambon Dori, Sansam Chiva, Suyes, Tenini to do just Chita de Chen, the dark in the Marinos. Or Tene Tangaranso, one. Takadushi Chijo Maris. Chiva Metas, it's how much it is. Yerua? You don't look, that's a Nato some of the down, the low game got on me and as a Shumbat, these two, some longer. Then they just said, your mother. Khenchen, Khenchen, how can I know more? Khenchen, game go Charlie, so it's sitting bottom of it. Khenchen, say to Khenchen, Kojil and I'm not on the Yoruba. What they do that what you know, what they Nichimata said. Tayori. Malari Pison Roa. Saison Roa. Carse. Chupon Orchid, those are me's. Chivamata lesson, the Menchilipa North Tido Chitos Amaras, Chupon Orchid, those are me's. Chigon Orchid, those are me's. Upon Shua Pusamis, that you made a not out Tanga, Messin, you should have shown us these, these to so the Rosa, that Lapsa Maris. Major Major, Upon Shua Pusamis, Shua Pusayo Maris. Magama. That you put in a normal boat, that normal boat use, Danga Shijuman singing, you know, dance, dancer your mares. Upon in Natanga, you meet Messin, the lady trees on studies, here to Sami, your mares. The Baureka Jesamis, Baureka Jesamis, Mabos, Tanga Lochimo use. Tangic Soncha, don't want the key to the general king, that you know the end of the your mares. Baureka Jesamis. Dame for Ruchisamis, and a lot of me, Tron Ruzina, Trodos some lady on your mars. Lot of me, not a Tron Dogins. Then some lady not Trodos are your mares. Dame for Ruchisamis. The male Luchisamis, ah, Tanabashi was a Casito not take Luchitos are your mares. Kebe Loju Trosamis, Mokepo get a Nimbo and get a Nimbo show, Jay go to your mares. What they do, what he so much he took mares. What in the answer that's in Chimata Samari, Gunama, Jailman, Guna use, and Ramalari, Jailman, Guna use. Majima, Tiboga, Maris, Guna use. Samari use. What in number is? Sansam Chiva Suishis, Sansam Chiva Suisse. And answer the name of some the Yavondo. Sunny Shiran de Rona, so the Kieto Maris. Training the Dujis, training doing the Gavachin, training Duchin. 我真其他的钱，其他的说呢，其他是马来是我做，出货到马来是，出货那在当然你嘛开始，老开始在多久了，做的老家有了，给你出货样式，我的啊，这是搞的好有啥的是。
So, in this way, by once we have contemplated the difficulty of achieving a precious human rebirth with leisures and endowments, then we know, how precious this opportunity is. But then we also have to understand that it's very fleeting, that it's impermanent, that it won't last very long. And so for that, we contemplate the second of the four thoughts that turn the mind, which is contemplating the inevitability of death and the truth of impermanence. And so if we don't have a strong sense of impermanence, then we won't be able to really practice. That which, prevents us from really, kind of realizing the essence of practice are the obscurations of attachment, aversion, and ignorance. And so in order to, we have to overcome attachment to samsara. And so this, by contemplating also the truth of impermanence, particularly in this case of the four thoughts, it really creates a sense of urgency. There's the need to really use this opportunity now in order to overcome or purify the mind of the three poisons and achieve liberation and awakening. And so we have no idea when we will die. And so it says in this quote in the text from the Sutra of Good Signs that there's no way to know when it is that you will die. There's kind of this assumption, that we won't die for a while because we have this sort of, even if we know the truth of impermanence, there's kind of inwardly the thought that, really it's, you die, those who are old, they die, and, there's kind of this progression to death. But actually, we know, if we think about that that's completely unfounded, because there are all sorts of people that die, at different stages of their life. Some die when they're very young, some die when they are older, some die in the prime of their youth or in the prime of their life. And so there's no way to know when the moment of death will come. And when that time of death comes, there's nothing that will be of any benefit other than your Dharma practice. So as Milarepa has said, there's no way to, even kind of the richest of people cannot bribe the Lord of Death. And those, who don't have any money, or those who are poor, can't convince the Lord of Death to, wait a while or to hold off because, they have been poor their whole life and, now is not the time to die. And those who are really strong and kind of brave cannot threaten the Lord of Death or cause carrying weapons and knives and other weapons. They can't conquer the Lord of Death, and those who don't have any courage can't outrun the Lord of Death or escape, run away from or flee and escape the Lord of Death. And so those who are really skilled in, speaking, or those who are really clever with their words can't kind of argue with the Lord of Death and convince him, to change his mind, or that he's got it wrong, or that now is not the time. No matter how skillfully they may be able to speak, they can't talk their way out of death. And so when the time comes, then there is no way to avoid it. One has no option but to be carried away by the Lord of Death. And, there's no choice in the matter. We can't so you can't bargain with the Lord of Death, saying, oh, today is not a good day, maybe, like later on another day in the future. The Lord of Death is not your friend. There is no way to hold him off for a few days or so.
Talo irka jibo nduwe namka ta yawo nduwe be chang da xingban de xingka yawo nduwe se ta namda sambo nduwe se tusu sambo irka jibo nduwe se wa ta digi irka re donka re sama tusu digi jibo nduwe se lav gres wa ta so se zog de den go se ku marsa so lo je son la ti se de zog de ha ko mares me se si ba me jes de no bo me chechu is ta mu kita ze ko ma che chechu no res ta 어태송이로 어태인디가 나랑서 테리우레 제단다 나랑서 이제 메타 댄스 이셰스라고로 제빈 타마치스 어다 제빈 타마 나로 잠레니 나나다 티 뭐마보제 제요레다 상이만데 다 와서와 이나다 페제메 세톱 랭교들로 자하 스티온메 페제디데 요마다 세랭교로와 데티바카타 소만도르다 어제빈 타마치스 제베 넘버 7에 다이 세버다 제산티 제르치야 인베 다댄서 제베 넘버 7에 다이 세라노 제베 넘버 7에 다 제베 트레이너스 nga je yon 시야 인바 세 다댄서 레스 제베 넘버 7에 다이 어ත네 Theo Jeben Tamachi, Dubetama Chase, or Dubentama chain or is. Mum was a yam duna, or the chain or is. Or the Chiam has a yoma, in Jiganson was he also was the Yuan. Tron Duna Chewa and Tonzana. Nian you don't seem young to board those. Tron do the part chase ona, Duna Chesana. Nian you don't seem to board those. 年年对他年纪本家他说在给前年不一，但我说在前不这玩意现在老个了，我就说他自满着嘛，在提车都皮他有，他有嘛事，年年对东西真不的，人他们吵架的不是，我人他们都说什么吵架那些是的，人他们吵架的不了，搞了提前都看门都送，搞了得上都门都什么要，当时吵架那提车去了，吵架的不搞了的。 送了。
And so, so Milarepa said that, you know, now, like when, you know, just sort of carried away by enjoying the different seasons or kind of the passing moments of one's life, you know, thinking, oh, you know, this year is really good, or the summer is really pleasant, the spring is really present, we have a good harvest. But really,
남다도 상봉도 wen도 틀랍 그래서 다 도르드나 랑 세신조데 토나요 말이스.
But is it really so pleasant and enjoyable when really, you know, death can come at any moment? So from, you know, all of the passing moments of one's life are really only leading closer and closer to the moment of death. And so to be kind of focused on the enjoyment, the fleeting enjoyments of this life becomes truly pointless. There, when we think about, you know, really reflect on impermanence, I'm thinking about the fact that, you know, all of those who lived not even that long ago, just like 100 years ago, are pretty much all gone. And so, you know, even though there's this idea that things will remain as they are for a very long time or continue to go on and on, it really will be very, you know, in no time this life will be over. Nobody really lives for that long. At the longest, maybe 100 years or so. But even that is not even really that long. And so, as you know, once we have been born, the sign of birth is death, or the nature of birth is death, just as also the nature of gathering is separation. And so Lord Jigten Sumgun says that when, you know, friends come together, this is already, you know, there is in no time that then there will be separation. So friends come together, they enjoy one another, you know, enjoying the company of friends and relatives and engaging in good conversation. All of this is just like, it's all false. You know, all of these nice words that we cling to are just like empty echoes. And in the coming together, the only outcome of that is separation. Whatever words that are spoken are, you know, long gone. And so there is nothing whatsoever to hold on to.
Norzane zeban tonzanas. Norzane parsi son tonzanas. Tonton ya ramek. Tonzanas. Senorzake simbalas. Senorzake simba najiris. Zakam chuje chakro yo. Wote najiris. Senorzake simbala. Galoti jendo kan mando son. Senorzake simba najiris. 디 타타 요나 타타 메바 차노 그래스 어때 자케 심바나 이레스 선or 자케 심바라 칼로티 젠도 감만도 송 어때서 로도 신도 산도 뭐도 삼노야고 당스 소소소 어 좀더 당 거래스 송어래 어때네 다 사이빈 타만 지스라라 단 컴만 지고 제 녜마다 로지 토마모 요래 컴바다 제 카르존세 조 너무데 제 존젠보도 마모 요래 다다 거기 메인자메 요마다 와다들 라면 타만지 산나들이 녜마 녜라마제 요래 콩 거르진도 샤틱 세종도 카르존세 사이에 존라테스 카르존세 사 컴바도 메 요마르사 사 존도 사 희행 컴바도 컴바도 카르존세 사이에 존라테 타 장리 메상 착자 조스 타 장리 메상 착자 조스 타 장리와 장제디 마 샤이 손에다 다사 그러면 자리 메상 착자 조로 좀래 어디 어디 나지데 차로 그러와 어디 좀마다 다라 컴바나기 원래 스타포랑나야 포랑나기 다 포랑제 약사야 어디 타마나 데르마 자리 착자한다시다 샤이 손에 야고 멜레다 양대 메데사 멜레 차로야 다 데르 요레스 다 자리 메상 착자 조로 좀도 어쨌든 나지 그 메타조도 되는 좋은로 그래서 어떤 나라서 티 메타 되는 좋은로 그래 나라서이나 다다 디데란다서 그러더니 다 뒤서 간 말이 좋은로도 와 나좀 고친 소쇼 말이 나라서 지나 아메리카 랜드 페이지로 주로 집도 비슷한 로산도 당고서 말이 전 시라 같이 뒤서 중요되는 로서 이제 말이 이제 조선도 니 말이 다 뭔로 그래 자랑고 보이나 추나지 이종 거라 추지 다 뭔로 그래 디스라고 말 세나지 메시지 듣는 좋은로 그래 당하라서 어떤 거 시라 소요 말아天다 정가서 뒤서 어디제 다 강토토서 냠내 치토비야 배송치 거 쇼래 말아래 배송 오래 나 치변제네 relations나 치변제네 relations 남시참이 공공니스 남시참이 바 공공 남치아요 말아 relation 레초 송로하고 남시참이 공공니스 다 가디시진 하고 좀 말해서 곰자로스 공 전 치변지파 포르니 다른 치변지파 포르시 어떤 치변지파 다 공치미 용매 전사시스 전 치미 용매 전사신도는 치변지파 요 말와 어때서 들으면라리 배트종으로 치바 마타고 배 레로드를 자스 어떤 치바 마타하고 검진 레로드를 자로 그래서 레로드 당가서 냠내 친냥 나 두리 어떻게 와트 메쇼데 치바 마타도 주야고 제소나 레로드 와트 쇼르그 말에 종으로 대두 대가서 그래서 디스콤 거셔래 지당가서 곰자 온두 신로 곰 강바 셀라고라 신로 곰 강바 세온두 다 저자 신본자 다와 동반인 정서 공홍나 디 신로 곰 강바 민직포마 곰 강바 미나데 야랑토 고마라 이제 신로 곰 강바테 거셔래 에 카레스는 가서 로도 시고노서 주제 거셔래 어때 나한테는 다른 직장 좀 반나기래 되는 차거와 자 쇼스자만데 뭐 되는데 신로 곰 강바테 개침보 차대요레스 나랑소 디스란데 나랑소다 섬노제 당나다 나랑소 뭐 시바리 파초 섬노제 당제 총선에 가시 고고 요런 가서 로 치에서 요래 총사 요래다 삼삼메 다곰데 들고나 펜토 요래다 그래 내가 로 치에서 요래 총사 요래 고든류 요래 메타서서 주야고지에서나 되는 냠냐치 앞에가 안제 메타레 이제 전송다 세지 안可以这种多那个说读不当年的那说是把几部起的读不的事情用都是没这么当年怎么用多的대충은 말해. 그러나 추고나 내려오간 된도 효마 도제. 상미간로 열면서 때 제 다당가서 제修이 샤데 티 제 두고 차로야 타. 트마히리 야고 차로야마. 다당가서 이 샤나 이리 전소디 시톰나. 냠내치 아디 스페니가 야고는 효면 두분도 말해. 어떻게 인데 생각서 잠노디 스탄 소소소소 치고 효레스. 대송아.
네, 가파고 초카이나 네 직진 순간 가래 돼.
대저마다 담보사 앞에 담만시 있어요.
So likewise, Chig says, whatever. So also, just as, whatever is born, the inevitability of birth is death, the inevitability of coming together is separation. The inevitability of gathering wealth is the exhaustion of it, so however much is gathered, it will eventually be used up or exhausted. So, in that way, whatever it is, whatever wealth that is accumulated or built up, it doesn't make any sense to have fixation to it because it will only be lost or eventually, be lost or used up or lost at the moment of death. It is as ephemeral as drops of dew on blades of grass, that it is just very fleeting. Whatever it is that appears in this life, all enjoyments are pervaded by this reality of impermanence. And so there's really nothing whatsoever to cling to. It is all as ephemeral as drops of dew on blades of grass. And so whatever it is that is built up, whatever that is constructed, is, the inevitability of that is its eventual destruction. So we can see that too when we look at, throughout history, there are all of these different great, buildings and houses and monuments that have been built that eventually crumble over time. And some of them, don't even, there are only the names of them that remain, not even the ruins, are to be found. And so there's a Lama who also said, even a palace, that like a great palace that is built, the greatest of palaces, is, eventually like their walls and the structure of the building starts to deteriorate and becomes, gradually starts to crumble and become dilapidated. And so this is the inevitable outcome of anything, is its eventual destruction. And so our lives are like that. There's constantly the signs of impermanence are around us. Moment by moment, this time is just becoming exhausted. Our lives are slipping away very quickly, moment by moment, just like something being carried away by a river. That is like how quickly our lives pass by. So Drupon Rinpoche said, he remembers, when he came to America, now it's been maybe 16 years or so, and he has this feeling like, he just arrived, like not that much time has passed, and it's just incredible to notice, how quickly time passes, that there's this kind of idea of, things will last for a long time, or that not so much time has passed. But really, when we investigate, when we really look, we're kind of stunned by how quickly impermanence really expresses itself, or how the nature of impermanence is really quite stunning. And so in that way, when we contemplate like this, we can really be inspired to make effort in our practice, knowing that there's nothing else that we can really rely on in this life, because everything will quickly fade. Everything is subject to impermanence. So just like Milarepa said, fearing death, I escaped to the mountains, or I retreated to the mountains, and contemplated the inevitability of death and impermanence, the truth of impermanence again and again, and eventually then I completely overcame the fear of death. And so also Milarepa says that it is by contemplating death and impermanence that one can conquer the demon of laziness. So this reflection on death and impermanence becomes great fuel to inspire us towards diligence and practice. So it is also said, revulsion is the foot of meditation. And so that, or revulsion, we could also translate it as disenchantment, is the foot of meditation, which is essentially means, becoming disenchanted, with samsara, or the phenomena of this life, or giving rise to renunciation is really the foot of meditation. So if we don't have the foot, then how can we possibly expect to meditate on Mahamudra, or emptiness? That becomes impossible without that foundation or that foot of disenchantment. And so in this way, we need to meditate on the four thoughts that turn the mind. And sometimes it's beneficial to think about all of the people in your own life, like really reflecting upon all of those who were in your life who are no longer there, all of those who have passed away that you actually know, and to really personalize, this impermanence by contemplating about how it is expressed in your own life. And some say, and especially actually when things are going well and we're kind of distracted and we're enjoying ourselves and time is passing without any thought of death and impermanence, that is a good time to then remember to reflect on the truth of impermanence. And this is not something to be depressing, and we don't need, we're not trying to prevent ourselves from feeling happy and become depressed. But actually that serves to create more happipiness, because when, it really is just the true nature of things, that everything is the nature of impermanence. And so then when we actually understand how things actually are, then, this ultimately becomes something that leads to a much greater and more stable contentment than kind of the temporary fleeting happinesses of being caught up in whatever enjoyments, temporary enjoyments there are in this life. So it's good to remember to reflect as much as we can on this truth of impermanence. There isn't anything, there's only something to be gained. There is nothing to be lost.
Nyima kadam gesheje yorse komeinla karakum chung labris karakum chung. Tene kom zang das karasen sacha zang rawa zang sacha je rawa te tra chapo zer gom jaxo sare te chapo tra gom ja de du chapo go tra sma je yorese sma je ya kom ma chapo go pebdu te namza tun toxo sare wa sma tiga ya dan tang ge sma ma ju cha ti zam grese tene ao tang ga chlo ton ya na lep tu mi ji shi sma jo ya te tu su chola re sam rese chilo me da tang khala se du chilo sa kyo sa ro tere han chilo ya nang zu du han tere chen le se yo ta nga na ya zu ne chilo tong tu mi ka he de cha bo selma tu de tu so chola re zam tru zam res wa te ndu te je ma selma ma chi kon chu ba top se res wa ta te chi ba ma ta ju je de se hin ro ta ta xiang wa wa ten ju chi.
So there's the story of the Kadamba Kara Gomchung, who was meditating in a cave, and in his meditation, he would every once in a while, he would need to come out of his cave, and there was this thorn bush that was growing at the opening of his cave, at the door of the cave. And at first, when the first time he had to go out of his cave, he noticed that it was growing bigger, and his robes got caught on the thorn bush, and he thought, I should really cut back this thorn bush. But then on second thought, he thought, what's the point? Who even knows if I'll, live long enough to go back inside of the cave? Why waste my time cutting back the thorn bush? And so then, again, going into the cave, he had the same problem of his robes getting caught on the bush. And then he thought, I should really cut back this thorn bush. But then again, he thought, well, what is the point? Who knows if I'll ever come out of the cave again? Who knows how long I will live? And it went on like this for a while. So each time he exited his cave, the thorn bush had grown even bigger, and he would think again, maybe he should cut it. But then he would be, he would feel like it would be a waste of time because of the inevitability of impermanence and death, and who knows how much time he has, and he should really just focus on the practice. And so in this way, he never got to cutting back the thorn bush, but he became a great accomplished master.
Drivu deva thang, le mege sana drivu dunga nyongre, songyore da, de konan chu maza pares. O de zai hanzai so shalan da wotru mares, konan chu nelo gang tndo chores. O tene zai le jumde zum cheba je yang dong zai, chem je yang dale mare. Konan ti chu konan nelo ne tang se yoro. O ti gang la tene le jumde se de. Tru chang ro re song le. Dang ga zu jitang chin na dang ga zu junde te Megeju, Gevaju, Lagrati, so Shagra. I Megeju Tina, Luke, Som, Sochu, Maji Lampa, Massanju, Majikun, the She, Nabsen, Nosen, Lord Marima, Nakuntra, Zun, Chama, Six of Nachetas or Yoro, Easy Gonsom, Nabsen, Nosen, Lotati, on Roa. What in Megeju, I don't Megeju, Tina, Donganyoa. Did Docho that Gevaju Lagra. Besha Zochap Chiang, the Khenchen Zochap, Jimba Dama, was Zochap Chiang, Jimba Dama, that's into Euro. What's it Dosho to Gevaju? Gevaju Gina, Deva to Grace, Megeju Gina, Dongar Migres. What in do Bechanda Siana Aranso, Shingaze Jalgina, Tina Zemadan, Donipo Jedo, Nochigina low. The Shingana low Jojina. Shinga non zema the zema raje gres. The Droten Dro raje gres. Naze zema droje almas, Drozema je almares. Or ten do conan, Jundet Betena gres. Good Gevachine Geva, given to me. Megachine Megan to me. That Jetante your minute, Chama Chorianzis. Lonely Chape Sianzis. They Jundet Misses that made Metsava make Rigat Savarwa. In a mere Chamotan Chazi Bares. The legend to Jomars, Luachuno Mars, and Richard Maris. Or Tiana, Lucenta, Lena, Garaja, Chumas, Danga to Laser Chishuna. The Hanse Kayetism, Danga Tadale, Tada Mamina, Kale, Kalepa, Mebachan, Chaya Mares. Casidina, the Gyaltsen, the Shochimbochina, send the Mikis. The show Chongsin, Jeva Chima Migris. The Mamina, Jeva Kashi Mia. Was also Chisha, so Legate Karina, then do with the social Noya. Yes, Mashank, the Pajob, the Yati, Jobs and other, she shank about Ranchi shall that Shanlet mean to yard. What to do your Maris? So Noya, yes, then doing an answer. That legend did Yabo, the Gores. Or give out you what can, top drop, make you what can, top ban. Then I also legend you need to be able to catch him, yes. What I get a line, but you did say the Malarepa, yes, Malarepa, that's
and so then the next is the contemplation on karma, cause and effect. And so karma, cause and effect is just the kind of natural reality of how things are, how things function on a relative level. It is nature. It isn't something that is created or something that needs to be believed in, but it actually is just nature, how things actually are, which is that when there is a particular cause, the outcome or result accords with the nature of the cause. So when we create causes that are wholesome in nature, that are virtuous in nature, the outcome of that is a corresponding wholesome result, or one that results in happiness or favorable conditions. And if we create negative causes, then the corresponding outcome is negativity and suffering and unfavorable conditions. And so it is just how things function. It is the way things naturally are. And so the way to practice in accord with this natural law is by avoiding, for instance, the actions of the 10 non-virtues and practicing the actions of the 10 virtues. So the 10 non-virtues are the 3 non-virtues of the body, which are killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. The 4 non-virtues of speech, which are false speech or telling lies, divisive speech, harsh speech, and idle chatter. And the 3 non-virtues of the mind, which are covetousness, ill will, and wrong view. And so any of the actions that are connected with these non-virtues inevitably have the outcome of suffering. On the other hand, there are the 10 virtues, which are like the direct opposite of the 10 non-virtues. So, for instance, as opposed to killing beings or taking the lives of others, one practices protecting lives, or protecting the lives of others, protecting beings. One practices generosity as opposed to killing and so forth, as opposed to stealing, and so on and so forth. So it is just like the direct opposite of the 10 non-virtues are the 10 virtues. And all actions that are kind of connected with these type of wholesome activities result in well-being and happiness. And this is an infallible reality. So it is just like, for instance, if you plant a particular seed, then that seed is only going to render a plant or a crop that accords with the seed. So if you plant wheat, then you're going to get a wheat harvest. If you plant lentils or beans, you're going to get a bean harvest. But there's never going to be a time when you plant wheat and you get beans. And there's never going to be a time when you plant beans and you get wheat. So it's the same with the virtues and non-virtues. We can't expect to engage in non-virtue and then have a positive or beneficial outcome from that, and vice versa. So it is said, in this way, the functioning of karma, cause, and effect is completely, it's utterly infallible. It is said that, it is possible maybe for fire to become cold, meaning actually it's impossible for fire to become cold because fire is the nature of heat. But it is more possible for fire to become cold than it is for a particular cause not to render its corresponding outcome. So it is impossible for karma not to function in this way. It would be possible maybe for fire to become cold, but it is still impossible for karma not to function as it does because it is infallible. And it is also not like karma can become lost. It's not like there's some maybe those, certain deeds won't actually get noticed, or meaning, they'll kind of get lost somewhere, or, that somehow, certain causes won't lead to certain results. And there's always the ripening at some point in time or another. Some like more powerful causes might have a quicker ripening, that happens in this life, or kind of less powerful or heavy causes might ripen it in any number of future lives. There's some causes that ripen in the very next life, but at some point in time or another, every single cause will result in its corresponding outcome, its corresponding result. And there's also no way to exchange karma with others. So somebody else can't take on the karma of another person. So it isn't like, somebody can experience the ripening of a karma that was actually created, by another being, another person. So it is infallible, and each person whoever creates any number of particular causes will have to be the one to experience the outcome of those causes or the results. And so in this way, we should really contemplate well the infallibility and the workings of karma, cause and effect. And based on that understanding, really become conscientious about the causes that we create, really make an effort to avoid non-virtue and really apply ourselves in the practice of virtue.
Jiktiana so le ji ji dang ran so ting sang zai de do to mian zai zhan ma zhan ma bu yo ro ran so tong de le de zo de ji wang me le sa hal tel den chung de le ye zong shuo jiktiana so le ji wo tian li dang ran so zai ge drop de kwang ta so ya bu chi go res da le jun de ye che chin da me la re fa na ji de me la re fa da nge ta re shu yin ba gong jun de ye che ne de ne da nge song men zhuo san mi zam de gong de kwa chi ne da zhe ge wa zhuo re 别讲的，这个打算的事情呢，老中人中这个，第二节讲光家不的，老中人，没来的吧的，这个打算了，这个打算是了，老中人说的光家，我第二节马冲北那马送的可能老中人光家不的，我打听出家出呀我嘞，可人头就说没来的吧，就说来中这次一切送的，所以给我drop那边干些做些，当我要不drop头些多呢，我跟马上把的计划起码。 그 송송 제면 거래 drop top 신도 상 가시 조시 drop 쇼래 가서 이치 송도 어떤 거랑 소 칸토 치고래
and so we can also see the reality of karma even by just looking at the diversity that is present in this world, how many different circumstances different people experience. They're all, there are those who are suffering in all sorts of different predicaments. There are those who have an abundance of ease and happiness in different situations. There are all different levels of high and low. So many different unique experiences that different beings go through in their lives. And that is because of the different karma, the different karmic results that are ripening for each of those beings respectively. And so in this way, we can really see the evidence of the diversity of karma and their corresponding results or outcomes. And that can also motivate us, again, to really apply ourselves in virtue and to abandon non-virtue. For instance, like Milarepa said before, he mentioned, that contemplating karma, cause, and effect, or with such confidence in karma, cause, and effect, he thought there's no other outcome for him than being reborn in the lower realms. And so that became a huge inspiration or push to him in his practice. And with the example of Milarepa, he spent 12 years meditating at the White Horsetooth Cave and didn't come out for 12 years. And that was, inspired or instigated by this total confidence in karma, cause, and effect. And then, the outcome of that was such joy, like unchanging joy and contentment. Because once, we totally abandon negativity and really practice what is wholesome and good, then the outcome of doing good deeds or practicing, what is wholesome is joyful. So we feel joy in knowing that we have been virtuous, that we have practiced, what is wholesome. So in that way, really developing a strong sense of confidence in the inevitability of karma, cause, and effect, and applying that to our own lives, then we do whatever we can to really clean up our conduct, to really practice what is pure and wholesome, and to avoid what is unwholesome.
cordoya get a lapshoro. Or Pechandas, Hidemzina, Drama Long Georgina, Drama Euro. The Tina Kurhido, Yatonsa will let Hamona, Tina Kurhido, Tina Guraja. Pechandas, that's Drama to Mami, just on the Sonsom, some of them. Tor sons and Torsi Sondro. And Drama Samson told some are okay to do now that in Cordore. Yatara Tamji may come on to Maton and answer to Najita. Jeva Samsa towards him, Lad Mulu Topsy, Samsung and Sonsom Jezigri. What to do? Thank you, and Kurva. What then Kurvati? Thank Kurvati Carisana. You don't draw right to Lavranyarva, Yeda, Tondo, Melta, Lama is Lavgroa. What in do that Malari is only. Shedanchina nearby draws, Shedanchina nearby draws and nearby Jedogis. Yandro Yamel, Damshit, Gamba Damshit, Yandro to Gumarwa. What in I draws and Damiara Gamba Damshit, Kisharwa. Draw jabs, Lavra. Shedanchina nearby draws. Senachina Yeda draws. Demochina Tondo draws. Dochachina Mayer draws. Chandochina Lami draws.
Wait, Dendro, Denny?
Sana Dochachina may draw the wa. Chandochina Lama draw, Lami draws, Lami draw. What in a Najachina high draws, Roa. One metar survey draw me, Tarwa Tamchim, Tarmatolity, Numo Trotic. What a tart of humor, yes, only. What Angaranso Nidia was around Dunga, Yada Dinkum Dunga Mamboze Lavora. What Yana Yitundo Lane Dunga, the Majigan and Chik Dunga Yoro. What the Lama Chando Dunga, Lanchibo Dungi Dunga Segrawang Aranso. What that is in Kurvatina, Dunga Mayo Mare, Selafuri. Pechandra Shanang Aranso, Tata Neka Devanda Suna. Could be not Jedi, Rangi Dungaris. Pechandra Shanang also Lapenti, the Punya Tea, Lapenti on Madeo Mares. The main on the Sona. Make the Made Changres, or the giant children, and also Made Changres, Tata Neka Negativo.
The young thing that the Pena Cabji Dunga Tawa, they gave Javore Samsung. The Dunga Tawa, Yorwa Dunga Sum Nangla, then somebody. Yeah, okay, that's one. The Chitang, the Lakbat.
Oh, they don't Chaban to Jidungare, Chaban to Jidungare.
Data did.
Oh, mix it Dungas on the Yavajala.
Yeah, that's
what that is then I can't on cheap do. What in that don't have cheap yes.
And so then the next contemplation is the contemplation of the defects of samsara. And so samsara is, when literally translated, is what we also translate as like, the wheel, it's a wheel or a cyclic existence. And so samsara turns like a wheel, meaning that, there's just kind of like a changing of positions, lifetime to lifetime. We're born in different circumstances and we just circle like that kind of infinitely or without end. And so it's the example that is given is like that of a bee being trapped in a glass jar. So sometimes the bee, buzzes and like it moves up to the top of the jar and buzzes around, and then it kind of like moves to the middle and then moves to the bottom, but it never escapes from the jar. It just buzzes to different locations in the jar. And so that's like us, like with like going to the top of the jar is like sometimes we're born in the 3 higher realms, and then sometimes then the buzzing around the bottom we're born in the 3 lower realms, and so this way we just sort of change based on karma that ripens at different times. We cycle from lifetime to lifetime, sometimes having the karma that they're experiencing the ripening of the karmas that lead to the happiness of the higher realms, happiness of gods and humans. Sometimes we experience the ripening of our negative karmas that result in, rebirth in the lower realms, in any of the various lower realms. And so the samsara is comprised of the 6 realms. There's 3 higher realms and the 3 lower realms. So the higher realms being the god realms, the demigod realms, and the realms of humans, the realm of humans, and the 3 lower realms being the realms of the animal realm, the realm of hungry ghosts, and the hell realms. So what determines the ripening of these different realms or taking births as, at various times in these different states is essentially different, is connected with actions that are based on the different afflictive emotions. So as Milarepa says, anger becomes, the chains that sort of like bind one or guide one or sort of leads one to the hell realms. Miserliness leads one to the realm of hungry ghosts. Ignorance leads one into the animal realms. Desire leads to the human realms. Jealousy leads one to the realm of demigods, and pride or arrogance leads one to the god realms. And so in this way, each of the 6 realms are also correspond with the propensity or kind of like are more associated with one of the 6 afflictive emotions more than the others in this way. And so, of course, wherever it is that one takes rebirth in samsara, there's no true happiness to be found. So as is said, for the gods, or for the in the hell realms, there's the extreme suffering of heat and cold and all sorts of torturous circumstances. In the hungry ghost realms, there's the suffering of starvation and thirst. In the animal realms, there's the suffering of sort of stupidity and being bound into servitude. In the human realms, there's the suffering of birth, old age, sickness, and death. In the demigod realms, there's the suffering of fighting, jealousy and fighting. And in the god realms, there's the suffering of transition and change, or transition and falling to lower rebirths. And so wherever it is that one takes birth in samsara, there's no place that is really truly absent of suffering. Even if there are temporary moments in which we experience the absence of suffering, if there is both still actually underlying suffering there, and there is no telling when certain conditions will, absence of suffering will actually change and become something that is experienced as suffering, or direct course suffering. So like holding an eyelash in the palm of your hand, you don't necessarily feel an eyelash when you're holding it in your hand, but once that eyelash enters your eyeball, then it becomes really evident, or it's really very painful when the eyelash is actually in your eye.
Tambo kurwa nyam gawas.
Wait, dampo, so the mila soon the name
Dran kurwa de la partenas. Tambo kurwa nyam gawas. Part nawan chike was.
Bardu.
Nawan chikes, chi nawatan chiake wores. Then tamadu kizona juice. Tamadu kizon kana chiriste.
Du ye song.
Zona juice. What's in Nigeria? Then around so Taratobia is Galacabore, Lafio Tondachina. Or then around so Mundasina, that's Shimba and Roa to Shimba to Parfio. Then also Mayna go Dankorina J. They don't know Zunkore. But you won't do our you mean it, don't our yuri. The Jisumala Pesonura. Chupo Namla, Yodo, Chi race. Chupunam Yodo, Yobedunga, Jutus Dapo Jamato, Leka Lenya to Leka Yabo Mele, what he don't hire it. Tamina Yasaris, and the Handunga, the Mobomina Yasaris. Ubonana, Meadows. I want to answer Saya to Yamaranga Judy soon as a Mizono. Or to Duke Dunga is. The Yominiki Dungaris, Yomi Tamchita Dungarkan, yes, only Malarepic. Or Malari citizen, dogs on the Dungadros. Dog not double chandles and Dungadris. Not double chandles and Dungadru. Gitrin, the Quatis. Tajibo cheating said the Quatis raising announcement. That's a go, that's also Jibo, the Quatis. The great duty Dungaris, the dogs on the Dungar, Gitrin, the Quatis. Into the Papa, into the Papa, and the Yabore, Zondoa. What in the tongue around so in Kurvat. Some no Yapo, down that's and the Gova Dungai, but some no down. So what thing I thought I lost to you, Diego, is. Nyima, Gadam Gishi yourself. Conk main large hambas, large hamba.
Kadam, long read hamba.
Or large hamba. Come, Monsieur, game of Chun Gin, Marcetta. Kurva Dungar, some no down. They do. Look at you carry the one up with the Hazi. Tankurva Dungar, some no down, a game of ghetto Hamado, who's only second. Then you might some Juna Medjay Sarwa. That's the Yuchimboji at Tiganza. That's the only youth key race. That's the youth Yabochos Amara. Then Rosie, Ropaji Chidos. The Konik parts, the youth key thesis. They do game of chorus. The mother game of chorin was. That Conkurva Dungar, some no down. What an eye. Ancora Dunga, Juji. I think the watching was on the down in Drupon, Danganazora. Duburism, the was on down Drupon. So give a drop for that. Give a drop, Taratam Chimba, Pomantovia, give a drop chico. What a lot of numbers to Yabo, comes on the Garansola Pentoyer, send the La Pentoyer is. Carsana Bay Chandras, and also whole, must make it say, Nation that you what a lady, care Maris and don't. Metari care Maris and Compino to the child. The child didn't also home to some of us. This day, you're a Metamana. Kona chute as a regunten Recha or Tenruno, something ladies. Kurva, this young girl also do Marcia or Tenrula as a child. Not some of Kona, Tendrula, send the last some of us. This day, you're going to do. Or ten do it down as a something is.
Dambo Milagi, Sungdi, Yabo
Lami.
No, the Mila de Dracorva
La party nas, party dus. Tambo Kurwa Nyam Gavas,
Dambo Corva
Nyam Gaworis. What now Chike was?
Nama Chikewa?
Satrapan Royal Lela Waris, Chin Royal. Tamaduk, it's on Jews.
Okay. So Milarepa said that, first when you look at samsara, first it's like, something that is kind of really alluring or delightful, or sort of the kind of something that's really enchanting or kind of infatuating, and then in the middle, it kind of leads you along like a kind of beautiful or alluring maiden, and in the end, it becomes something that imprisons you, or it just like leaves you kind of thrown or in a prison. And so samsara is difficult to escape from. And there's, so regardless of wherever it is that one takes birth in the 6 realms, there's only there's always the inevitability of suffering in each of those realms, and whatever circumstances that one has, as is said, for those who have a lot, even if one is rich, and this is also something that Milarepa says. So even if one has a lot of wealth, there's the suffering of having, and if one is poor, there's the suffering of not having enough. So both the rich and the poor suffer. So Milarepa says this, those who have suffer from having. Once you have, then there are all of the different sufferings that come along with having wealth. Once you have that wealth, you have to be afraid of losing it. You have to employ people to do, different things to kind of help you to maintain that wealth. There are all of these headaches that come with having too much or having a lot. And then those who don't have enough, or those who are poor, suffer from lack or from not having enough. So both those who are rich and those who are poor suffer together. And so in any case, mainly we have to just continuously reflect on these four thoughts that turn the mind, and to develop a sense of disenchantment with the kind of limited happiness that can be experienced in this world. So there's the story of the Kadampa Geshe Langri Tampa, who always contemplated the four thoughts, and he, in doing so, so the suffering of samsara, not just the four thoughts, but like particularly the suffering of samsara he contemplated, and as a result he became very kind of sullen in his expression. He always looked very serious, and he was never seen to laugh. So he never laughed, he never smiled, he always had kind of a sullen expression. Except for one time he is reported to have laughed, and that was when he saw, he never laughed because he was always thinking or contemplating about contemplating the suffering of samsara. But on one occasion, he witnessed a mouse and trying to move like a heavy piece of turquoise from a mandala. He was, trying to lift this heavy piece of turquoise, but he couldn't do it on his own. So he solicited the help of his friend, another mouse, to come help him carry the turquoise. And so when the Kadampa Langri Tamba saw this, he erupted, into laughter. He was seen to laugh, and that was the only time that anyone ever saw him laugh. So it doesn't do any good only to think, samsara is bad or samsara is suffering. We have to then actually do something about it. So we have to use that as motivation to really dedicate ourselves to the practice of virtue. And so that in that way, these reflections on the four thoughts really become what inspires or motivates us to practice. And actually, it's also beneficial, even in this life, there are benefits, overall benefits or contentment that can be developed from contemplating the four thoughts. So, for instance, in Tibet, where, these are really kind of commonly, there are views that are part of the culture, essentially. There's a custom of saying things like, when something negative happens or misfortune befalls one, then there might be kind of the expression like, well, everything is impermanent. What can I expect? Of course, everything is impermanent. And that can actually help to lessen the pain in a moment of really intense suffering when there is also the acceptance of impermanence, or the acceptance of, also they'll say, oh, it's karma, what can I do? It's karma. Or, what, of course, sometimes there's going to be suffering. We're born in samsara, so suffering is an inevitability. And those kinds of expressions also help, to foster a sense of acceptance when difficulties and hardships are experienced. So there's also kind of that very practical benefit that comes in this life too, by contemplating the four thoughts. So then today we'll end with the teachings here and continue tomorrow.
당가 좀 괜찮은 뭐지 공책 책으로 봐. 어드네 답에 야고를 가서 쉬야 고급 상보레스. 그래서나 다접진 같이는 뭐 특히 뭐남지네. 다다 공책 공정 개발요 말레스. 어드네 누가랑 소대 다 공책 제제 쇼톰나. 알아서 배서 남친 보는 같이는 뭐 특히 뭐남지네. 공나라 폐업드네 공책 나야서 좀 가서 고급 상보레. 알아서 남친 친보레 스타트도 지로 공책 나거 봐.
So also just, Drupon would like to say that, you know, really express to you how precious, how special it is to have Khenchen Rinpoche here and to receive the teachings on the Gong Chig from him. You know, and this is really, of course, due to the kindness and foresight of Gyaltsen Rinpoche, who knows, just as they all know, actually, that there's nobody who is more learned in the Gong Chig than Khenchen Rinpoche. And so to have this opportunity to receive teachings on the Gong Chig from him is really, really precious. And so it's good, you know, to be aware of just like what an amazing opportunity it is. So sorry, we are a little bit late in ending today.
Chanjo Zenjo Renboje Maje Banai Je Jorje Je Bai Nyam Bar Me Bar Yo Kone Gonda
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.